First of all, Father, we want to thank you for this occasion. We thank you for the past year. We thank you for the progress that's been made since we last met. And we thank you for this event. We thank you for the speakers, the facilitators. We thank you for those who've worked tirelessly behind the scene to make this day possible.
But principally, I think, in faith groups and churches who have got buildings which are prominent in the local community and which bring together in solidarity and in common purpose many, many people. And you can just imagine this place. At the weekend, Delroy was telling me you've now started a second service on a Sunday morning because the church is so busy.
3, 2, 1.
How many people can tell me that you love him through and through? Live for him, die for him, serve him because he's true. How many people can tell me that you give him what he asks for? Money, time, soul, and mind. I'm one of them. One of them lovers. One of them servants. One of them children. Do you know who you really are? One of them praisers. Walking in favor. One of them faithful.
Following last year's conference, brought together different communities in a local setting with health professionals to help think about what the local problems are, what the local solutions might be, and then take that back to the health and social care providers to see if we can come up with joint solutions for locally determined problems. So rather than professionals going in saying this is wrong and here's what we do about it, it's communities and professionals coming together to tackle jointly agreed issues.
I think it's very important that people who use our services, and we are providing a public service, are able to ask the questions that they want to ask and expect honest and transparent answers. I mean, one of the things that was raised here this afternoon is why are there so many, a disproportionate amount of people from the black and minority ethnic community suffering from mental illness and being admitted into our services, often under the Mental Health Act. And I think that's something that together we've got to examine and explore.
Okay, with your experience within mental health, what do you think some of those reasons are?
Well, I think it's because we have some way to go in understanding the cultural background and cultural needs of local communities, but also local communities need to understand that we all have a responsibility to recognise when somebody is suffering from mental distress that may lead to mental disorder much earlier in the process. So it's education on both sides.
I think there are a number of problems. I think it's partly to do with general kind of issues in society. You know, our young black men are just not supported and looked after. No one's hearing them, no one's listening to them, and so they've stopped talking. Mental health services are not designed for young black men. You know, people don't want to go and access and ask for help early until situations get to such a crisis when the only alternative is, you know, the police and being sectioned. I think that, you know, I think the role of fathers. There aren't many role models, and so, you know, our young black men don't have people to look up to, don't have an alternative. And also, you know, when you go into a mental health service, you will not see young black men or role models in that service. I'm not going to go somewhere where I'm not represented. They won't understand me.
Through the workshops and through the continuing work which we do, we can gather and begin to see how many organisations here, and I see a number of churches, Pastor Bishop Len Rose Church, for example, and there's a number of other churches here. We started NTA, we started Tooting Islamic Centre, we started Association of Somali Women and Children, and then we grow, and we build and we grow from there.
And what we came out with were themes of equality. We had 6 themes of equality that came out from that. That service would actually value cultural diversity, focus more on preventative approaches.
One of the things we would like to do, and our chairman said it, was in relation to actually going public with the figures we've got for young black people in mental health services, how many are sectioned, and we'll come the next event, not in a year, in a couple of months, we will come and we'll go public with those figures, and then we'll have an adult conversation about it and see what we can do collectively about it. We can't do anything without the community. The community need to tell us, things where we need to change.
Definitely, and that also goes again for the co-production thing. I mean, how do we go about getting people to work together and then putting all this into action?
Yeah, well, through events like this, we keep having events, and then we have them in different communities across the borough. And I think there were some points made about GPs. You know, the health world is changing again, and there was a couple of GPs here today. We need to get some more GPs engaged, but with good representation from public health, which was great, I thought.
I'm not surprised at how vocal everybody's been. I think the issues that were discussed are issues that have been being discussed since, before I was probably born. I think in terms of the workshop, we got a lot out of the workshop. Everybody was really interactive and they participated. The issues that came out for us were quite key, because I think if we can get those issues right in terms of what people need for services in tackling race equality, then we can get it right.
That we still leave this situation where we've got the master on one side, whomever he or she might be, and then you've got the servants on the other side, and so we end up with this conflict, us and them, as opposed to if we're talking about empowerment, then we're all in the basket together.
First of all, I think we need transparency. I ask you in the room, how many of you have been part of consultations? And then do you ever get the consultation report back? Do you ever get shown that report? Do you ever get told how that consultation has been implemented?
What I see is we're at the tip of the iceberg, and it's really chipping at that iceberg and really carry on chipping so that we can get to a stage where it's no longer there, because it's facing us as this thing that can't move, it's too heavy, it's not shifting. And so it's really hoping that we can shift some of that. I mean, I certainly think that we need to do more work with GPs. Now, I know they are overworked, I know they are stretched, but I certainly think that if we're not going to work with our GPs, we're not going to move this, because they're going to be gatekeepers to mental health services, and if they haven't got the knowledge to know how to assess, to know how to diagnose, to know how to pick up earlier, then we're not going to get that change.
In the workshop, we were engaging people in, one is exploring the meanings that they give to mental health, discovering actually that a lot of people think when they use the word mental health, they're really thinking mental illness. And that's really important, because when we're thinking in terms of preventative stuff, it's important that actually people's minds goes to illness. It's important for us to understand that, because it means that quite often people will avoid thinking about it because they are worried that actually you don't want to examine the possibility they might be mentally ill, whereas we're looking at the opposite, which is how can we pay attention to our mental health and the quality of health we have, and what can we do to make sure that actually we stay more healthy. I think that actually they're only difficult to reach because of how the institutions construct their ideas and actually how they advertise things and how they move out. I think we do have to, I think that our community is used to not being talked to, and so consequently we don't readily reach out to these things. But once people come, you realize that actually in their hearts they really, really want something to be different, and they really, really want to see a change. And so I think that actually the enthusiasm and the energy and everything else didn't surprise me. I just wish we could see it more.
The challenges of it were things like gender and how people in Muslim communities and the differences between men and women, and how women can try and access some kind of therapy session with IAPT, either by being say introduced by another female consultant, or perhaps going to somebody who's not part of the Muslim community at all. And the key is maintaining that confidentiality on a one-to-one basis. And I also talked about it doesn't just have to be in the church. I mean, I know that IAPT is facilitated in the church, but I also have IAPT as well, which is just around the corner. And other community groups that are not religious can also provide that access to people who feel that the church might have a barrier to them being fairly and confidentially discussed.
Funny enough, I find that a lot of mental health patients, whether or not they come from a spiritual background, they somehow get interested in spirituality. A lot of them, from their illness, they talk a lot about God and wanting to know more. A lot of them are saying they want to change faiths. A lot of them just become very God conscious. So I realised that spirituality is obviously an important aspect of mental health. And it's good to see that there's people that realise that as well and doing stuff about it.
Definitely. And so what did you think about today's event, and what kind of things have you learned?
Today was amazing. Obviously highlighted the importance of spirituality within mental health. I liked the way it was sort of holistic in its approach. So it talked about spirituality, it talked about psychology, it spoke about, it saw mental health from a complete view of things. So even things like the person's background, financial crisis, and how the church and organisations such as South West London, St George's, can impact on patients by reaching out to them holistically, not just from a medical point of view.
It was enormously useful for me, and I think it's important to continue this cohesive process between the services and the service users, as we call them sometimes, because I think that will enable to have more responsive services and better services at the end of the day.